Ladies and gentlemen, this is Wiley Drake, and I just gave you a live update a little while ago. I said I might not be on at 5 o'clock because I am at one of those very special meetings that I really enjoy attending. You've heard me talk about it on the show. One of the speakers here has been on my show many times, Bill Federer, and you've heard about him. But I am here, and I came back down the hallway here just a little while ago because we have another meeting at 5, right past 5, and my show is on at 5 California time. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to just cancel my show? I didn't want to miss the meeting because I certainly didn't want to miss Bill. He was on already, but there's some other good guys coming on later, and I want to get them as well. So I was trying to decide what to do. I never, I'm close to Hollywood, so, the show must go on kind of thing. And so I decided, though, to at least pray about it and think about it. And so I walked down the hall here just sort of praying and thinking, and lo and behold, Bill Federer sitting here on the couch talking to another pastor. So I said, hey, okay, that's my answer. We'll do a show. We're going to do about a 5 minutes till 4 show rather than Wiley Live at 5. And we're going to do that in just one second. We got a good signal here. Let me change the camera around. And now, we have, ladies and gentlemen, live, not at 5, but live at 3:50, actually, here in Las Vegas. And I know some of my friends that knew me back when I was not close to the Lord. They're going to say, oh, Wiley's backslid. He's back in Vegas. I have not backslidden. I am not in Vegas for the gambling, for the girls, for the music, for the shows. I am here for one of those special meetings that I've attended over the years, the last few years, held by our dear, dear friend and the folks there at American Renewal Project, Brother David Lane. And they're doing another one here in Las Vegas called Nevada Renewal Project. And one of the keynote speakers today was my current guest on the camera. And I'm going to ask him to do as we always do. Rather than me interview him and ask him and give his information, he knows it better than anybody else. So I want you to introduce yourself, tell my listening audience who you are, and why are you here in Las Vegas. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Wiley, and it's an honor to be on your program again. I have written about 20 books on American history, world history. One is on the history of Islam. And when you read a lot of history, you begin to see patterns. It was Patrick Henry who said in his Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death speech, he said, I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. And then Winston Churchill said, the further back you look, the further forward you are likely to see. Lord Acton, who was the historian that said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, Lord Acton said the story of the future is written in the past.
Amen.
And even Arthur Schlesinger Jr. was a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian on John F. Kennedy's staff, and he said, history is to the nation what memory is to the individual. So if you can imagine an individual who's lost their memory, maybe they have Alzheimer's, they forgot who they are, they forgot who you are, you can manipulate them pretty easy, take advantage of them. Well, in America, we've lost our memory. Here we are, the freest and most prosperous country that planet Earth has ever seen, and we forgot how we got here. And as a result, we're letting it slip through our fingers like sand. And so when I share stories of our country's past and how unique America is in world history, in a sense, I'm feeling like I'm giving our country its memory back.
Amen.
It's like going to somebody who has Alzheimer's and giving them back their memory. This is who you are.
Amen. Well, and that is certainly very, very important. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to clear something up right now on this show because I have had Bill on my show before, but I've also quoted him many times, used a lot of his material, and I've had people even call me up and say, hey, you stole that from Bill. And I'm very proud to say I've stolen a lot of stuff from you.
It's free for the taking.
And used it on my program. Now, if people would like to get some of your material, and I recommend it highly, of course, tell them how to get in touch with you if they want to get some of your books, some information. How do they reach you?
Well, thank you, Wiley. My website is AmericanMinute.com, AmericanMinute.com, and I send out a daily email called American Minute. Also do it as a radio spot, and then also as a TV program on my website.
And on the Wiley Drake Show.
on the Wiley Drake Show. And I do a half-hour television program on the TCT network on DirecTV, and it's titled Faith in History. And so again, it goes back and looks at the history. Some of the interesting things that I've done recently is a book on Islam, and with the killings in San Bernardino and the killings in Paris. And we have people saying, well, those killers, they do not represent true Islam. Yet the killers are saying Allahu Akbar, and they say they are representing true Islam.
That's right.
Who can tell us what true Islam is? One person, Muhammad. So Muhammad was the best Muslim that ever lived. His life is called the Sunnah, which means the way or the example. And so by understanding Muhammad's life, we can understand those that are trying to be like him. So Muhammad's life went through 3 stages. He was a religious leader, a political leader, and a military leader. And so from 610 AD to 622 AD, Muhammad was a religious leader in the pagan city of Mecca. And he only makes 70 converts in 12 years. He gets confrontational, he gets chased out of town for disturbing the peace, and he is a Muslim refugee. He has no place to go. Tries going to a city called Al-Taif, and they don't want him. They pelt him with rocks and stones and chase him out of town. So there's a city to the north called Medina. It's a Jewish city. 3 Jewish tribes control Medina, and they are nice. They let Muhammad in as a Muslim immigrant. He goes into the minority neighborhoods, and he goes amongst those who have no voice in the city government. They're pagans. The Jews control the city. And so he sort of builds a coalition, begins to build a following. We're sort of familiar with the term organizing in the community, so he organizes a following, and he goes back to the Jews with this following, and he pressures them to accommodate him politically. Like, don't offend us, and you need to change your life. So they make a treaty with Muhammad. And now Muhammad is a political leader in addition to being a religious leader. Then something happens. Muhammad's followers, they get pushy, argumentative, and threatening. They get chased out of Mecca. They are Muslim refugees. They have no place to go. They go to Medina, and the Jews let them in as Muslim immigrants. And they go into Muhammad's neighborhood, and Muhammad allows his followers to rob the caravans headed to Mecca in retaliation for the Meccans chasing them out of town. So where Jesus said, if they take your coat, give them your shirt, Muhammad's attitude was, if they take your house, you retaliate, take their caravan.
Amen.
And so Muhammad had 300 warriors, and they would rob caravans. He actually got a whole chapter of the Quran, it's chapter 8, Surah 8, on how to distribute booty from robbing caravans. Muhammad got 1/5 of the booty. And so the Meccans send 1,000 soldiers to protect their caravan in the year 624 AD, and Muhammad defeats them at the Battle of Badr, B-A-D-R, Badr. And so this amazing victory, having been outnumbered 3-1, convinces Muhammad to be a military leader. And he fights in 66 battles and raids in the next 8 years before he dies. He even uses the catapult when he attacked a city called Al-Taif. And when they told Muhammad that this catapult was hurling rocks and killing innocent women and children, Muhammad's response was, they are among them. So they got to be killed too. So suicide bombers and ISIS killers say it's okay to kill innocent people to advance Islam because Muhammad did. San Bernardino killers, Paris killers, they say, well, we're following in the example of Muhammad and the rightly guided caliphs. And so while there are lots of Muslims who are nonviolent, the fundamental ones see themselves as the true followers. And so some definitions. The word Islam means submission to the will of Allah. A Muslim is one who has submitted to the will of Allah. And they think there'll be world peace when the whole world submits to the will of Allah. So Islam is a religion of peace. It's just their definition of the word peace is different than ours.
Yes.
Our definition of the word peace is different groups getting along. Their definition of the word peace is world Islam.
Amen.
Now, a moderate Muslim thinks the world is going to submit to Allah later, maybe in the distant future. And so for them, they just want to live their lives. And they have no problem living in a free democratic society and having a kafir infidel as a neighbor. The fundamental Muslim, they think the world is supposed to submit to Allah now. And they're really excited. They want to help make it happen.
Amen. And it's really a matter of timing for them.
Yeah. Now, the dilemma that we face in the West is the more we bend over backwards to show ourselves nice and tolerant and accepting, the more the moderate Muslim begins to rethink and says, this has never happened before. Maybe the world is, in fact, submitting to Allah now rather than later. And so they gravitate from the future peaceful moderate camp into the fundamental now camp, which is the violent camp. So all of our efforts to show ourselves really, really tolerant is actually creating more violence.
Right. And one of the things that we've done, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I was in San Bernardino just a couple of hours as a pastor, as a counselor there. I was invited there, and we've talked about that several times since then. But one of the other things we've talked about is we already were working and have been working even before San Bernardino on an organization that we're calling Missionaries for Security. And we're training people on how to survive a shooting situation. We know that if there had been one armed person in that building, that shooting situation could have had a lot less casualties than it had. So we're going to be working on that. But it's important to know the background, and that's why I appreciate Bill so much. In fact, I was interviewed last week by CNN, and the reporter got angry with me because he said, I don't want to talk to his other reporter, I don't want to interview Wiley because Wiley says CNN stands for certainly not the news. And I have said that, and I still stand by that. But one of the other things the guy said, well, I want to ask him a question about something else Wiley, said on the program, and that is, I said, we need to take the word history and make it a hyphenated word. And, you know, we have a lot of hyphenation going on, Hillary hyphen Rodham Clinton and so forth. We have a lot of hyphenation. And I said, okay, let's hyphenate the word history. H-I-S hyphen story. His story. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why I read everything I can. That's why I use Bill's information, his 1 minutes especially, on my shows on a very regular basis. But I would encourage you to get his materials. And before we go off, I want to have Bill one more time tell our listening audience how they can get the books, where they can get them, and I recommend them highly. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Wiley. My website, again, is AmericanMinute.com, AmericanMinute.com. And
now, they can sign up for the American Minute in their email and get that how often?
Every day.
Every day, every day. And they can get that. And give that website one more time.
It's AmericanMinute.com.
All right.
And one of the concerns that I have is all of the immigrants being brought over to America, and there's no background checks being done. And the evidence is that at least a percentage of them may be ISIS members, and we're spreading them out all across the country. And the thought is, are we being set up maybe for an Arab Spring? Think of it, if we had simultaneous Baltimores and Fergusons and Parises and San Bernardinos, and it'll build up more and more toward the next election, and people begin to say, the president needs to declare this a national emergency. And then the media will pick it up, and then they'll start, showing all the murders, and then finally the president will say, okay, this is a national emergency. Well, all of the executive orders that go back to Kennedy's Bay of Pigs kick in, and he'll get control of the radio, the TV, the internet, the food supplies, the water supplies, the financial transactions, can move whole population groups, can take away civil rights, take away guns. And in other words, we're one national crisis away from fundamentally changing our form of government.
And even the liberal media is talking about we may be. They're talking about, I heard one say the other day, it's not if we will have a crisis, but when. Right,
and so the 500 years ago, Italy was a bunch of city-states. Venice, Genoa, Naples, Florence, Siena, and they all had armies and navies and fought. Machiavelli thought if one prince could control all of Italy, it would stop the infighting. So Machiavelli, around 1498, writes this book called The Prince, where he advocates the ends justifies the means. The end of one prince controlling all of Italy is so good because it'll stop the infighting between these little kingdoms that any means necessary to get there is okay. So the ends justifies the means.
Mm.
So if a prince wants to conquer a city in his quest to unify Italy and the city does not want to be conquered, well, they'd hate him. But if the prince paid criminals to kill cows, burn barns, create crisis and terror, the people would cry out for help. The prince would come in and kill the very criminals he bribed. Nobody would know the better for it, and they'd praise him as a hero.
Mm.
And in a sense, it's good marketing. You create the need and fill it. You go around the back of the house and set it on fire. Then you go around the front of the house and sell them a fire extinguisher. Mm. And they'll pay anything for it, and thank you for being there.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing, it's called Machiavellianism, where you create or capitalize on a crisis to consolidate control. Or as Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And so it's this idea that if you want to concentrate power, and in times of crises people are willing to let go of power, then the next step is those that would want to create or capitalize on a crisis. Now in Russia, they would have agent provocateurs and agitators and community organizers and labor organizers, and their goal was to go in and create a really bad crisis so that the people would be begging a strong leader to come in and restore order. And when the dust settled, the people will have just given up their freedom and a will take over. Mm. So 45 countries fell to communist dictators this way. Mm. You know, there's Stalin, Pol Pot, Ho Chi Minh, Castro, Mao Zedong. So it is possible for countries to change their form of governments through crises. And Caesar was the same way. Rome was a republic where the people were the king ruling through their representatives until it got really in a chaotic situation, and Julius Caesar found a way to usurp power and make himself dictator for life, and eventually with his nephew Octavius Caesar transitioned from a Roman republic to a Roman empire. Mm. I mean, it was 500 years a republic, and then it transitioned to an empire. So we have a republic in America where the people rule through their servants called politicians. But we see this power gravitating away from the people and into the hands of fewer and fewer people. And the thought is, are we moving in a direction? Washington warned of that in his farewell address. George Washington said, usurpation, which is doing something you're not authorized to do, but you get away with it. Usurpation, though in one instance is the instrument of good, it is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. So in other words, I want to do something good. I got to usurp a little extra power to do it, and but people let me get away with it because I want to do something good. Mm. Well, when the dust settles, you'll have concentrated power, and Washington says this is how free governments are destroyed. So if somebody wanted to do something bad and concentrate power, the people would be up in arms. No, you can't do that. But if the guy says, I want to do something good, I just don't have time to wait for Congress. Yeah. I have my pen, my phone. People say, well, he wants to do something good. He doesn't have time. Yeah, just go let him do it.
Well, and I think you've said it several times. That ends up being the ends justifies the means. Mm-hmm. And we're certainly aware of that. And I know that you're very supportive of the American Renewal Project, and in this case, Nevada Renewal Project. Let me just ask you one closing question, and I'll give you as much time as you need, but I want to simply say, with that in mind, with the projects, with other things, what can we do? What can the average American citizen do? I know we want to promote the American Renewal Project and that kind of thing, but what else can our listeners, our TV audience, what can we do in this situation?
Well, that's a great question, Wiley, and one of the things I bring out is the question, who is the king in America? Mm. Who is the king in America? Well, you read through the founders, John Jay said, the people are the sovereign in this country. In other words, the people are the king, and the politicians are the servants. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is, who is the counselor to the king? Well, let's see, 70% of Americans identify themselves as Christian. 70%, I think, is a majority. And so they go to church, and the churches have pastors. And so the pastors are talking to the king. Hmm. And so one set of pastors wants the king to stay asleep and neglect his responsibility. Another set of pastors want to wake the king up.
Amen.
And say, you don't just have the privilege of voting in America. You will be held accountable to God for what happens in America.
Amen.
And so God has something for each individual person to do.
Amen.
And so you say, what should I do? Well, yes, vote, yes, get involved. But you need to ask God what you are supposed to do, because he made every person uniquely different. We're the same so that we can relate to each other, but we're different because God has a unique plan for each person. And so you are the king, and you are directly under God, and so you need to ask him what you want to do, and then have his will take place through you, through your involvement.
Amen.
The politicians are your servants.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Bill Federer. And one more time before we close out, I want you to give them your website. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to find more about this God-given gift that he has given to this man to do what he's doing, you want to get his materials, you want to hear his 1-minute commentaries, if you will, on a daily basis, go to his website and get those. And then come on the Wiley Drake Show and talk about them.
Amen.
And now tell them how to find you and where to get the materials.
Well, thank you again, Wiley. It's AmericanMinute.com. AmericanMinute.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Bill Federer.